The first wisp of smoke curled above the rooftops of Maplewood Lane, drifting lazily through the soft morning air. The sun was still climbing, golden light spilling across trimmed lawns and identical driveways. It should have been a quiet, perfect morning, the kind this neighborhood was known for. But then came the smell, rich, smoky, and mouth-watering. At the end of the street, parked just beside a pale yellow house, stood an old silver food truck. Its side window was open, a man in a black apron flipping something over a sizzling grill. The sound of oil popping broke the silence. Across the street, a curtain twitched, then another. Neighbors began stepping out, squinting toward the truck. They whispered, confused, "Who starts cooking barbecue at 8 a.m.? One woman, Marjorie Finch, head of the neighborhood association, adjusted her pearl necklace and grabbed her phone. Her heels clicked on the pavement as she walked closer, her expression tight. "Excuse me," she called out, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You can't park that thing here. This is a private community." The man looked up, wiping his hands on a towel. "Morning, ma'am. I'm just setting up breakfast. First day in the neighborhood." Her jaw clenched. "There are rules about commercial activity. You'll need to move that truck immediately." He nodded politely but didn't move. "Understood. But I've got a few folks who ordered online already. I'll wrap up in a bit." That calm tone, respectful but firm, only fueled her irritation. "Sir, I am the HOA president," she said, raising her voice. "If you don't comply, I'll be forced to issue a formal complaint." He turned down the burner, then met her eyes. "Do what you have to do, ma'am." "I'll be here tomorrow, too." For a moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the faint hiss of the grill and the low hum of a distant lawnmower. Then, without another word, Marjorie walked off, already typing on her phone, her complaint in motion. As she turned the corner, the man watched her go, then glanced down at his phone. A message flashed across the screen. "First shift done." They noticed sooner than expected. He smirked slightly and went back to cooking. The smell of grilled bacon drifting across Maplewood Lane. No one knew it yet, but this food truck wasn't just here to serve breakfast. It was here to expose something that would turn this perfect neighborhood upside down. By late morning, the quiet street had turned curious. A few neighbors who had initially frowned from their porches were now drawn in by the smell. Smoky ribs, grilled onions, and something else no one could quite place. The truck wasn't flashy, just brushed metal with a faded logo that read, "The Grilling Station." But everything about the man behind it radiated calm confidence. His name was Eli Torres. Mid-40s, sleeves rolled to his elbows, a clean beard peppered with gray. His movements were precise, the kind of rhythm that came from years of doing something not for money, but for pride. Each order he plated looked less like street food and more like something out of a magazine. People started approaching, cautiously at first. A mailman parked nearby asked, "You open, man?" Eli smiled, always. "First meal's on me." Within minutes, there was a small line. Families, joggers, even a couple of workers from nearby construction joined in. The air filled with laughter, chatter, and the faint country tune playing from the truck's tiny radio. From her porch, Marjorie watched with crossed arms. Her expression sharpened with every laugh, every plate handed out. Her phone buzzed with messages from the HOA group chat. "Who approved that? This is against Section 8B, commercial activity limits. It's blocking the view of the cul-de-sac." Marjorie typed back quickly. "Don't worry, I'm handling it." But something about Eli unsettled her. He wasn't defensive like most people she scolded. He didn't argue or plead. He just smiled, polite, steady, unbothered. That composure made her feel small, like the rules she clung to didn't matter at all. Around noon, she called a quick HOA meeting in her living room. 5 members gathered, sipping lemonade and murmuring about the truck situation. "We can't allow this kind of thing," she said firmly. "If one person brings a food truck, next it'll be yard sales, then parties, then God knows what." An older man cleared his throat. "Marjorie, maybe he's just—" "No," she cut him off. "He's violating our policy, and I've already filed a report with code enforcement." Outside, the hum of the food truck continued. Kids laughed, music played, and the smell of grilled corn drifted through her open window. By the time the meeting ended, half the neighborhood had eaten from Eli's truck. He cleaned up quietly, waved to the last customers, and leaned against the doorframe. watching the sky darken with the ease of a man who'd done exactly what he came to do. Inside her house, Marjorie stared out the window, her reflection caught in the glass, the first glimmer of frustration turning into something colder, and somewhere behind that calm smile of Eli's, a plan was unfolding, one that no one in Maplewood Lane was ready for. By the next afternoon, the rhythm of the street had changed. Cars that once rolled past without slowing were now stopping beside the silver truck. The smell had become a kind of signal, smoke curling up through the maples, leading people right to it. Eli had just served a young couple their food when he noticed a white envelope tucked under his windshield wiper. He peeled it open slowly, already guessing who it was from. The paper was crisp, the wording formal. Notice of violation. Unauthorized commercial activity in a residential zone. Cease operations immediately. He read it twice, then folded it neatly and set it beside the grill. A few nearby customers watched, whispering, "You're not shutting down, are you?" One of them asked. Eli smiled faintly. Not today. He went right back to cooking, flipping, seasoning, plating. If the letter had shaken him, he didn't show it. But something about his quiet confidence made everyone else uneasy, like he knew something they didn't. Across the street, Marjorie was watching again. She saw him read the letter, saw that he didn't pack up, and her jaw tightened. She dialed a number she'd been saving, the city inspector's direct line. That evening, just as the sun dipped, a white utility van pulled up. Two inspectors stepped out with clipboards. The crowd scattered slightly, pretending not to stare. Eli wiped his hands, met them halfway, and nodded politely. "This your operation?" One of them asked. "Yes, sir. You've been cited." "You're aware of that?" "I am." "Then you know you're supposed to stop until this is cleared." Eli looked over their shoulders, kids waving from bikes, a mother thanking him for the best sandwich she'd had in years, an elderly man sitting on the curb finishing his fries. Then he turned back. "With all due respect," he said, "this truck's not violating anything." The inspector frowned. "How do you figure?" Eli reached inside, pulled out a laminated sheet, and handed it over. It was a business permit, official, current, and signed by someone high up. The inspector scanned it, then exchanged a glance with his partner. "Who issued this?" he asked. Eli's smile deepened slightly. "That's above your pay grade, I think." Marjorie stepped closer, indignant. You can't cook out here like this. This is a neighborhood, not a carnival." Eli turned to her, his tone soft but steady. "You're right, ma'am. It's not. It's a home. And that's exactly why I'm here." For a moment, no one knew what that meant. The inspectors hesitated, the neighbors whispered, and Eli quietly went back to his grill, the sound of sizzling meat filling the silence that followed. When he closed up for the night, Marjorie stood in her doorway watching him drive off. Her frustration was starting to twist into something else, curiosity. Who exactly was this man who could defy the rules so calmly and walk away untouched? By the time morning rolled around, the street was buzzing again, not with engines or chatter, but with quiet anticipation. Everyone had seen what happened the day before, the inspectors, the letter, the argument. Yet the silver truck was back in its same spot, gleaming under the early sun, grill already warm, music softly playing. Marjorie stood by her window, phone in hand, scrolling through a community group chat. Messages flew fast. "He's back again." "Didn't he get cited?" "I heard he's connected." "Like government-level connected." That last one made her pause. "Connected? How connected could a food truck guy be?" She decided this needed to end properly. No calls this time. She'd gather proof, pictures, witnesses, a solid case the HOA couldn't ignore. If the city wouldn't shut him down, she'd make sure someone else did. By noon, she'd enlisted 2 other board members, Ron and Linda. They parked across the street, pretending to check their mail while snapping photos from behind their cars. Eli noticed, of course, but never reacted. He served his customers with the same calm smile, occasionally glancing toward them. Not irritated, just, "Where?" Then around 2 p.m., something changed. A dark SUV pulled up, the kind that made people instinctively step aside. Its windows were tinted, but when the door opened, a man in a sharp suit stepped out, sunglasses low, talking into an earpiece. He walked right past the line of customers and greeted Eli with a firm handshake. "Appreciate you keeping this spot open," the man said. Eli just nodded. "Always do." They spoke for a moment in low tones before the suited man took his meal, returned to the SUV, and drove off. The entire street seemed to hold its breath. Marjorie, still watching, leaned forward. "Who was that?" she muttered. Ron shrugged. "Looked like federal, maybe?" Linda frowned. "No way. Why would a federal agent eat here?" But by evening, whispers had turned into rumors that the man was some kind of law enforcement officer, maybe FBI, maybe DEA, that Eli wasn't just a food truck guy, that this was more than barbecue. And as the neighborhood gossiped, Eli was setting something quietly in motion. He started staying later, serving past sunset. He brought in a second grill, a generator, even a few folding tables. He moved with purpose, like he was preparing for something none of them could see coming. Marjorie could feel it too, that tightening in her chest whenever she looked out at the growing crowd. Families, teenagers, even officers from the nearby precinct had started showing up. By nightfall, it wasn't just a food truck anymore. It was a gathering place. And Marjorie, convinced she was losing control of her own neighborhood, decided that tomorrow she'd make her move. The next morning, the smell of smoked meat drifted through the cul-de-sac long before the sun was high. It was stronger than usual, richer, sharper, the kind that clung to the air and drew people out of their homes like a slow spell. By 10 a.m., half the neighborhood was already outside, pretending to walk dogs or check mailboxes, eyes fixed on the same spot, Eli's food truck. Only this time it wasn't just parked, it was surrounded. 2 black SUVs stood at either end of the street, and men in uniform were quietly setting up a small cordon. No sirens, no shouting, just quiet authority, the kind that made people whisper. Marjorie stormed down her driveway, clutching a file of HOA violation notices. "This is it," she muttered. "He's finally getting shut down." But as she approached, a uniformed officer stepped in her path. "Ma'am, you'll need to stay behind the line." "Behind the—" "I live here," she snapped. "That man is violating half the HOA code, and I've reported him 3 times this week. You need to—" "Ma'am," the officer interrupted, calm but firm. "That man's working with us." Marjorie froze. "With you?" The officer glanced toward Eli, who was now standing beside the same suited man from the day before. They weren't shutting anything down. They were shaking hands, laughing quietly. The man reached into his pocket and pulled out a badge. The sunlight hit the gold just long enough for everyone nearby to see the words Sheriff's Department gleam back. Eli turned, scanning the crowd until his eyes found Marjorie. His expression wasn't smug or angry. It was almost kind. "You should have just asked," he said softly, voice carrying just enough for her to hear. The suited man clapped him on the shoulder. "This guy's been running catering for our unit for months. Best barbecue in the county." A ripple of gasps ran through the watching neighbors. Marjorie's papers slipped from her hand, fluttering across the pavement like white flags. In seconds, everything she'd assumed, every complaint, every late-night email, crumbled. She hadn't been fighting some random street vendor. She'd been trying to shut down the sheriff's personal food truck. And worse, the sheriff wasn't angry. He was amused. "Looks like your HOA's been keeping my guy busy," he said, smiling just enough to make her wish she'd stayed inside. By the time the SUVs rolled out and the officers dispersed, the story had already started spreading through the block, in whispers, in laughs, in the glow of 100 phones typing the same message, the woman who tried to ban the sheriff's barbecue. Eli stayed until the crowd thinned, cleaning his grill with the same calm focus as always. When he finally looked up, the street was quiet again, except for Marjorie standing on her porch, speechless for the first time in weeks. He smiled faintly and called out, "Lunch tomorrow, same time?" She didn't answer, but everyone else did. That night, Willow Creek didn't sound like itself. Normally, the cul-de-sac went still after dark. The hum of air conditioners, the quiet rhythm of sprinklers, the faint buzz of porch lights. But tonight, laughter carried down the street. The smell of grilled ribs and smoked brisket drifted past driveways, over trimmed hedges. right into the homes of people who had signed the complaint letters just days ago, and right at the center of it all, Eli's food truck. Its lights glowed warm against the night, music low, steady. The sheriff's cruiser was parked beside it, not as a warning this time, but as a sign. Families gathered near picnic tables Eli had set up along the curb, kids running with plates in hand, a dozen neighbors chatting like they hadn't spent weeks whispering behind curtains. Everyone was there, except Marjorie. She stood at her window, blinds drawn just enough to peek through. The laughter outside seemed louder from where she stood. Her husband sat silently at the kitchen table, phone in hand, scrolling through the local community page. Post after post, pictures of Eli smiling beside officers, hashtags about the best BBQ in the county. The comments poured in. Turns out the HOA picked the wrong guy. Karma tastes like smoked ribs. When her phone buzzed, she hesitated before answering. It was the HOA vice president whispering in panic. "Marjorie, we've been served a notice. The sheriff's office is opening a formal review into our conduct. They said your name came up." Her voice cracked. "My name. They're calling it harassment of a public contractor." The words hit like a punch. She looked out the window again and saw Eli turning off the truck lights, surrounded by people thanking him. He looked peaceful, even content. No anger, no gloating. Just a man who knew he didn't have to fight anymore. The next morning, a plain envelope appeared on every doorstep in the neighborhood. An official HOA memo announcing Marjorie's resignation due to personal reasons. No one was surprised. Eli's food truck stayed. In fact, it grew, now permitted, endorsed, and regularly visited by half the police force. By evening, the once silent streets of Willow Creek smelled like slow-cooked justice and second chances. And as the sun dipped low, Eli wiped down his grill one last time for the day, looked across the neighborhood that once tried to silence him, and smiled quietly. Sometimes, he thought, the best revenge doesn't need fire, just patience, and a really good smoker.